Coming up on KCCI 8 News Close Up, we are on the heels of Iowa's primary election, what's at stake in Iowa's 4 congressional districts. Plus, as Iowans head to the polls, how election officials are making security their top priority.
This is Iowa's news leader. This is KCCI 8 News Close Up.
Good morning, and thanks for joining us for KCCI 8 News Close Up. I'm Chief Political Reporter Amanda Rooker. Now, we're now just 2 days away from the primary election, and voters can still vote early, but only in person. That can be done at your county auditor's office or at a satellite early voting station up until 5 p.m. tomorrow. You do have to be registered in order to vote. You can check your registration status at voterready.iowa.gov. If you still need to register, you can do that online at the Iowa Secretary of State's website or at the polls on Election Day. Just make sure you have your ID and proof of residency, like a utility bill with your name and address on it. Now, if you're not sure where to cast your ballot on Tuesday, you can also find your polling location on the Secretary of State's website. Over the past few months, we have been getting to know all the Iowans running for Congress. All 4 U.S. House seats are up for election this year, and Tuesday's primary will help each party decide the candidate that they want on the ballot in November. So let's look at who's running. District 1 encompasses most of southeast Iowa. Republican incumbent Marionette Miller Meeks is running for re-election. She faces Republican primary challenger David Pouch. Whoever wins that will face Democrat Christina Bohannon in November. In Iowa's 2nd district, that encompasses most of northeast Iowa, the matchup there is already set. Republican incumbent Ashley Hinson will face Democrat Sarah Corkery in November. Iowa's 3rd congressional district includes southwest Iowa. Democrats Lennon Bacom and Melissa Vine are facing off in the Democratic primary. Whoever wins will take on Republican Zach Nunn in November. That will likely be one of the most competitive U.S. House races in the country. Looking now to Iowa's 4th congressional district, that includes a large portion of northwest Iowa. Republican incumbent Randy Feenstra is facing Republican primary challenger Kevin Virgil. Democrat Ryan Melton is also running for the seat. Well, that is a lot of names that I just rambled off there. And to talk all about the primary election, we have 2 very smart political minds with us. Republican strategist David Oman, Democratic strategist Jeff Link. Thank you so much for being here this morning.
Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. Glad to be here.
Well, overall, it seems like it has been kind of a sleepy primary election cycle so far. We haven't seen that many, talking about the congressional races, we haven't seen that many congressional campaign events, a few ads here and there, but not a ton of, significant attention on these races. David, why is that?
Well, first of all, it has been quiet, and the Iowans have been preoccupied with terrible weather for the last month. Yeah. But just like the weather, these primaries will be over in a couple of days, you mentioned that, and then the summer will be here, June's here, and they'll heat up. Why do I say that? A couple of reasons. First of all, the House in our Congress today is almost evenly split. 217 Rs, 213 Ds, 5 seats vacant. So you do the math, a couple of seats switching each way, 2 or 3 or 4 will change control of the U.S. House. They talk about 20 seats in our country that really are in play. 2 of them are in Iowa. So those will be outsized races that national people, interests, and donors will be looking at. The other thing that I think will amplify these races is there's no governor race in Iowa this year, and this is that one cycle out of 3 when there's no Senate race. So the presidential candidates, 2 or 3 or however many independent parties there are, will be at the top, and these House members will all be right below them. So that will also make those races even more notable and more important.
But given that, you would think that there may be some more fervor around, the parties really wanting to make sure who they're picking heading into those matchups are electable candidates. Why do you think we maybe haven't seen a ton of outspoken kind of fervor? Of course, it's a primary, so maybe there's not that level of passion, but there's still maybe less than what we've seen in past years.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. The parties haven't been engaged because these primaries, typically the parties let the candidates sort it out and then they get behind the nominee, whoever that might be. And when the parties come in and the outside groups come in that are supporting one party to the other, that's when you get get the tremendous amount of money that comes into the state, and you start seeing ads all the time, and they pop up on your phone or on your television. We're not at that point yet. As David said, we got to get past the primary before we really start seeing that. And I think it will happen very quickly as we get past the primary for all the reasons that David just pointed out. The House is just on a razor-thin margin between the two parties, and when you have donors from around the country, both Republican and Democrat, looking at where can they put their resources to make a difference, places like Iowa's 3rd District and the 1st District are terrific investments, number one. And number two, Iowa's a relatively inexpensive place to campaign. So it makes it even easier to kind of direct resources to these places. I think we're going to see plenty of politics once we get past Tuesday.
I'm going to go PS real quick. We're talking about these quiet, sleepy primaries. Some of us have run for office. We've all been involved in campaigns. For those people, it's not quiet,
right.
And it's not sleepy. So we thank them and appreciate all that they do. It's hard to get known when you're unknown.
Right. And talking a little bit about, voters and when they'll engage, and what issues they're paying attention to. I know those candidates have been knocking doors and listening and hearing things. But Jeff, I want to start with you. Looking at Iowa's congressional delegation right now, it's all Republican. What are the issues that you think Democrats are really going to be hitting home on, heading into the general election to try to flip some of those seats?
I think Democrats need to continue to focus on the economy. It's been a tried and true issue for Democrats, and there have been cycles where we've wandered away from that. We gotta have a strong focus on rebuilding the middle class. We have to have a strong focus on building up working families, and then once we establish that, then there are other issues. I think the Republicans are getting out of step on issues of choice and some of the other issues when it relates to women's rights. And I think those will be a part of the conversation throughout the fall, but we have to build a base in the economy. We have to support domestic manufacturing. There's a lot of initiatives going on to really push jobs back into the United States. You'll see President Biden is starting to get tough on trade issues, which is kind of a shift. And I think that's going to be part of this refocus on the economy.
David, same question to you. What do you think the messaging is we're going to hear from the Republicans who are trying to keep their seats?
Well, they should have been listening to Jeff with that advice a couple of years ago. Bidenomics, this is not meant to be overly partisan, but it hasn't worked. And young people, even into their 40s, mid-40s, can't afford a down payment, even buy a home and deal with the interest rates. And so we have got to turn this economy around. I remember a story, I used to work for Governor Ray, that's a long time ago, before you were born even, but a great friend of his was the former late governor of Ohio, who was in his office one time, and they were talking about what was going to happen in that cycle. And Jim Rhodes was the guy. He pulled his wallet out and he said, voters care about this. They care about who's putting in and who's taking out. And they think government overreaches. Taxes are too high. And in an economy when it's hard to get a job, hard to buy a house, something needs to change. And the Republicans have views, and our delegation has been pointing on a lot of that. Streamline taxes, cut spending, grow the economy, put people back to work. And then, by the way, we'll talk probably about it in a minute, to deal with the border. Those are going to be the key issues, I think, that you'll see emerge in the summer. Both really already have. But once we're through the primary, I think that will be a big dividing line between the parties in these races.
Right. The economy will be interesting to see how, both parties hammer home on dollars and cents. Right. Well, our conversation is going to continue. We'll be right back after this break. But first, we're asking every candidate for their final pitch to voters ahead of the primary election. Here's what Iowa's 1st and 2nd district candidates had to say.
If you are tired of politics as usual, if you are tired of politicians who basically do nothing and just want to fight with each other and who won't do anything good for fear that they will be perceived as working with the other side or giving the other side a win, if you want somebody who's really going to work for you and represent the people of Iowa, then I'm your candidate.
I'm trying to craft policy that brings down healthcare prices, addresses the high prices for their cost of living, make sure that our country and our borders are secure, and make sure that we can grow our economy while reducing emissions to have a cleaner, healthier environment, and making our upcoming world the place where young people want to be, grow, and fulfill their potential.
You don't want an anti-Trump liberal in Congress anymore from the 1st District. 1st District has had too many of these people in there for the last 60, 70 years. Here's your chance to get a real conservative, America First, conservative constitutionalist. Get rid of this anti-Trump Congresswoman in there and vote with someone who can really be concerned about your issues and your concerns.
I think Iowans are ready for a fresh perspective. You know, I am new to the political scene. I am an outsider. I'm not part of the establishment, and I think that's part of my appeal. I speak plainly. I've got common sense. I'm a small business owner. My family represents more of Iowa than Ashley does. And our experiences in life have taught us that we can take setbacks and turn them into setups. And that's what we're going to do for Iowa.
I know inflation is affecting your families and your small businesses. I hear you. I understand you're concerned about the safety and security of this country with an open border under President Biden. And I hear you. I know what's happening on the global stage, and that has you worried about our American sons and daughters potentially have to engage in a conflict going forward. So I will do everything I can to continue to fight for Iowans' priorities, to fight for taxpayers, to make sure rural America has a seat at the table, and to keep our communities safe and secure.
Welcome back to Close Up. U.S. House candidate Melissa Vine and her former campaign manager are each facing $500 fines from the Iowa Ethics Board. Vine is seeking the Democratic nomination for Iowa's 3rd congressional district, where each were fined $500 after an investigation found that Vine's former campaign manager, Lou McDonald, who's now been fired, made dozens of donations to the Iowa Unity Coalition, a political action committee, under other people's names. Earlier this month, the Vine campaign told KCCI that the ethics complaint came from a mistake made by a staff member. Well, a lot there. Now I do want to continue talking about the primary ahead. We'll maybe stay on talking about Iowa's 3rd congressional district. Jeff Link, David Oman, thanks for being here with us. Jeff, we'll start with you. Talking about that 3rd district, we have Democrats Lenon Beckham and Melissa Vine, who are both running for that seat. You know, even way before that ethics violation, it seemed that a lot of the state party really coalesced around Lenon Beckham. Then the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee threw their support behind him, so now he's receiving national and a lot of state endorsements. Why do you think there was so much early support rallying around him?
Well, I think Lenon Beckham is a terrific candidate, first of all. He has worked in government and politics for more than 20 years. I've known him for more than 20 years personally. He comes from Southeast Iowa, was brought basically to Des Moines with the Vilsack administration, and not only worked with Governor Vilsack, but with Secretary Vilsack, and that kind of a base and understanding of government and agriculture, and his experience as a veteran, I think really just has made him a really terrific candidate.
From what you're hearing, it doesn't seem like there's really reliable, substantial polling in this race, but from what you're hearing, does it seem like Bacom does have the lead in this race?
Well, if you just look at the campaign finance, he's raising an incredible amount of money, and in fact, in the first quarter he outraised the incumbent Zach Nunn, which is pretty remarkable for a challenger who's facing a primary. And this, when 6 or 8 months ago, when you were looking at a primary with Melissa Vine and Lennon Bacom, you'd probably say it was a toss-up. And she's a good candidate. She has a terrific story and compelling background. But the campaign just, has stumbled, and it really hasn't taken off. Whereas Lennon really has taken off, and I think is going to put himself in a really good position going into the general election to take on Zach Nunn.
Yeah, quickly, we only have a little time left, but David, I want to hear your take on this. Obviously, it will be a competitive race in November, and whoever the Democrats, select will kind of shape what race Nunn has ahead of him. What do you make of that?
Well, unquestionably, District 3 has switched a lot. It went from D to R in 2012. It stayed R with a new candidate in 2014, David Young, who went Democrat in 18 and came back to the Republican side in 22. Look, Zach Nunn is a really special person. I've gotten to know him and his family over the last couple of years. He's got a very high ceiling, and that's maybe metaphorical given his Air Force work, but he is one really smart guy, but he's grounded. And what I think is important, and at a time when we're all talking about the polarization in politics, we've talked about that off air, the Lugar Center, just about a week ago, the bipartisan Lugar Center, I won't get into all the background, rated all 435 members of Congress. They do it every year. Zach was rated the number 10 in the country in being the most bipartisan. There were 4 Republicans and 6 Democrats on that list. He was on that list, ranked number 10. His work on rural housing, on veteran suicide, parental leave for National Guard members, and other bills and amendments and work he's done in committee earned him that ranking. I think the voters will like that and respect that in November.
Well, that is all the time we have for right now. Okay. We'll continue our conversation with both of you. But after the break, but first, candidates for Iowa's 3rd congressional district are making their pitch to voters. Here's what they had to say.
I'm an Iowan born and raised, and I love this country. I served for 8 years in the military, including a deployment to Afghanistan. I was part of the Iowa National Guard, enlisted as a combat engineer. From my time in my service to my time in public service, working at the U.S. Department of Agriculture, I have learned and I've prepared. I am ready to serve this district right now to deliver results for Iowans, for what they need and for what we need in our communities again. I'll put politics aside. I'll work with anyone to make things happen.
Iowa has helped raise me, and I want to give back to the state that has given me so much. It's the main reason that we've invested most of our time in Iowa, getting out, listening to folks, and being their advocate. The best bills that we've passed all came from talking to Iowans and hearing what their concerns are. I want to be a fighter for them, but more than that, I want to be able to take their needs to Washington and deliver them real results like we have done consistently over the first 2 years.
I have a story to tell, a story of overcoming adversity right here in Iowa. And I learned in that process that if you don't walk on the very thin line that Republican policy provides for you, you are not welcome in the party. And I want to say today that this campaign and this party has a much broader road that will welcome you, that there's a seat at the table for you, and we want to hear your stories.
Welcome back to Close Up. We've been talking to Republican strategist David Oman and Democratic strategist Jeff Link. Thank you so much. And I know in our last conversation we were talking a little bit about the 3rd District. Jeff, you had another thought there to share.
Yeah, just a final thought after watching the pieces on the 3rd District candidates. If it does happen to be Zach Nunn versus Lenon Beckham, they're both going to talk about their record serving our country in the military. I think the one thing that's going to be interesting to watch, Zach Nunn was an officer in the Air Force. Lenon was enlisted. And it's kind of a twist. You would think sometimes the Democrat would be the officer and the Republican would be enlisted, but that's turned on its head in this race, and I think that will come to fruition as we learn more about these two.
And I know another thing you had to mention was just a legislative, race that you have been watching closely.
Yeah, I think there's one really interesting Democratic House race. It's Akeo Abdul Samad's open seat. He's not running again. There are 4 candidates in that race. Reverend Rob Johnson is probably the establishment favorite. Akeo has endorsed him. But John Campbell is a longtime labor leader, has been doing a lot of work, knocking on doors, raising more money than Johnson. I think that's going to be interesting. I think the other 2 candidates are working hard too, but it's probably between Campbell and Johnson.
Well, that is interesting. That is also all the time we have. Thank you both for joining us. And quickly, we want to also show you the final pitches from Iowa's District 4 candidates, what they're telling voters.
I deliver results for Iowans. I have been born and raised in Iowa. I understand what Iowa needs. I go to all 36 of my counties twice a year to listen to families, to listen to the farming community, to listen to small businesses. And I take that information and I bring it to Congress and try to find and create solutions for them to make Iowa a great place to live and make sure our nation is safe and make sure that we are protected by the rule and the law of the land.
People are looking for a candidate they can trust. A candidate who doesn't use someone else's talking points, a candidate who's real, who does their own research, who reaches out to people, is willing to talk to anyone and everyone, and who knows that when they look at their FEC filings, they're not going to be owned by corporate America. And they'll find that in me. And so I'm going to continue to speak truth to power and be a fighter for the people, regardless of their political affiliation.
This country was founded based on constitutional principles, and my intent is to adhere to those, and I will never vote for any legislation that does not pass that litmus test. I intend to score a perfect 100, according to all those organizations out there that track the constitutional compliance of your elected representatives. And I will fight for the rights of Iowans. I intend to be a loud advocate for them, and that's why I think they should vote for me.
Welcome back to Close Up. State officials from multiple agencies are preparing ahead of Tuesday's primary election. KCCI's Ethan Humble shows us their effort to ensure the election is secure.
The voting machines are being tested.
These tests take place in view of the public ahead of the elections.
And state officials from a number of agencies are making sure election night is as secure as possible.
We stand here shoulder to shoulder with our partners to emphasize that violating election laws will not be tolerated.
John Benson is the director of the Iowa Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management. He and his team monitor the elections as they happen, and they are ready to respond as needed. However, he says it would be better if there was no work to do.
I'm perfectly happy to have my folks sit in here for a complete day and have nothing for them to do. That would be the best situation, and it's happened that way for the last many elections.
Kate Conley is with the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, also known as CISA. She says her team sees new ways for people to hack our election systems, and they're working to stay on top of the changes.
We cannot stop pushing to do more because we must meet the evolving threats ahead of us.
It comes with the ever-growing importance of making security a top priority.
My message to Iowans is this: if you decide to vote in the 2024 primary, know that your vote will be counted accurately and securely.
Ethan Humble, KCCI 8 News, Iowa's news leader.
Thank you for joining us for KCCI 8 News Close Up. We'll see you back here next Sunday. Have a great day.